question is that about the fear. There's a big event is coming on September 1st, and there will be like 6,000 plus or 5,000 plus people will get together at Chess Center to celebrate our Eid. Some of my family members, some of my relatives, some of our community members, they are always asking the question, is it safe to go for that? So, I mean, my question is that what kind of a safety or what kind of a thing we may require for that big gathering?
Police officers like to answer this question.
So would be part of your
Can you repeat the question?
Well, on 1st of September is the second Eid festival of Muslims. Muslims have two festivals per year, and a large number of Muslims gather in Chase Center to pray. Oftentimes the congregation is around 5,000 to 6,000 people. So now there are people in the community who seem to be worried whether they can go there, because not only do Muslims go and pray there, but they also dress in traditional clothes, and so they're all very visible and might be visually provocative. So people are feeling insecure, and so major adult dress up.
So I find it interesting. At the onset, the statement that was made was that I'm not necessarily part of your community, but I would argue everybody that's here tonight, and certainly all those that live and work Delaware, we're all part of that greater community, which are those that have a vested interest in well-being of Delaware. So before a large gathering of folks at the Chase Center, I think we have to be aware and prepared for wherever violence may show up. And the reality of what we live in today is that we can't always really predict what's going to happen. We do a lot of things through our group of individuals that work for the state police to help work with the proprietors of special events and try to talk about things that they consider in the management of their events. We basically call them threat assessments, make suggestions, have good dialogue about how you can best be prepared for mitigating threats to the greatest degree possible. But the reality is we don't know where these acts of violence are going to show up, and sometimes why. So I think it needs to be something that we all should be, I don't want to say fearful, because I think the minute that we give in to fear, we've lost. But what we need to be is educated and prepared. So we have personnel that go out and actually provide that kind of training. It's called Violent Intruder Preparedness and Response, and it really talks a lot of open dialogue about the kinds of things that, the onset of violence that you may see. And when you do recognize those things being present, what are my options for response? Basically, it's a lot of already proven practices like you may have seen run, hide, fight. So what are your really options when that violent intruder shows up at our doorstep? Yes, sir.
Is the Ku Klux Klan considered a terrorist group?
Is the criminal Ku Klux Klan considered a terrorist group? I think that might be actually better. That's fortunately, and I'm not trying to pass the buck, but the reality is that it's kind of working with quote-unquote terrorist groups falls under the really the jurisdiction of our Federal Bureau of Investigation. I can share with you a little bit about what we do at the state level with groups. For us to basically collect any information about a group that we think could be potentially possible of doing harm, we have to have what's called a criminal nexus presence. So we have to have that knowledge that there is a tie to criminal activity. And certainly once we have that, then we have the ability to try to be as informed as possible. And then when we have that information at our disposal, it's really our responsibility then to go out and say, who in Delaware does that most impact, and how can I share that information with them responsibly so they can be aware of threats they may face. With that, James, do you have anything to add?
I think I can just give you a very generic reply in that, again, historically, the FBI is very familiar with the Ku Klux Klan. Where there's a threat of violence or intimidation, we have acted very forcefully and very quickly to address those issues. Unfortunately right now, obviously as you see from the news, there's a lot of arguments made on both sides about what the First Amendment protects, what sort of speech does it protect, and that question is being played out right now in Congress and on many different levels. So I think the outcome of that debate is really going to tell how society is going to move forward in addressing groups like the Ku Klux Klan, the neo-Nazi movement, and other white supremacist movement. So, but a very good question. Thank you.
I think they are employees. They can't answer that question. I will answer that question for you. If you step out of this door and keep going in this direction, you will reach Rising Sun. You step out of that door and keep going in this direction, you will reach Middletown. And it was not long ago that KKK used to march in the main streets of both those places. And if I'm not mistaken, the three major federal areas of investigations in our part of the world have been keeping an eye on Muslims, white-collar crime, and also the rise of what we call the sovereign citizens and white racist groups. Last year, the KKK was distributing flyers in Christiana Mall. But your question has already been answered. That kid who drove down from Ohio and drove a car. You know, when I heard that a man drove a car into a group of people, I thought, oh my God, what is ISIS doing here? And then they said he's not a terrorist. They didn't call him a terrorist. Then I realized that obviously this terrorist is not Muslim. Thank God. They haven't charged him with terrorism yet. They've charged him with everything they can, but he's not being. Even though the president said, you may call it terrorism, and Jeff Sessions said that we are trying our best to ensure that what he did meets the standards of the statute for terrorism. So I've never seen U.S. law enforcement agonize so much before calling somebody a terrorist, especially the president. I mean, he normally calls people terrorists even if they're not. So yes, I think the fact that KKK still exists tells you that there has been too much tolerance of white supremacists, and the problem is exactly like this. You have Steve Bannon in the White House who created the concept of alt-right. So yes, it's a serious challenge, and I don't think that the law enforcement people can handle it because first the laws have to be changed. So it's the politicians who will have to address the issue first and deal with it before we can make policies which the law enforcement people can implement. So something.
Quick comment and a big thanks. Thanks to Brian for getting back to the lady